I was sitting in my law office on a Friday afternoon, putting the finishing touches on my final case before my wedding weekend. The mountain resort was booked, my custom dress was hanging perfectly in my closet, and Marcus had texted me that morning saying he and Jake were heading to the venue for last-minute preparations. I was practically glowing with excitement thinking about how perfect everything would be. When my phone buzzed with a photo from Marcus, I smiled before I even looked. I thought it was going to be a sweet surprise from our beautiful venue, but when I opened it and saw Marcus and Jake standing at our altar with their arms around each other, huge grins on their faces, and read the caption, "We're getting married instead," my entire world shattered in an instant. That moment changed everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. Before I tell you how I turned this betrayal into the best revenge of my life, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that will make you believe in the power of a woman who refuses to be broken. Trust me, you will want to hear how this ends. Let me take you back to the beginning so you understand just how deep this betrayal cut. Marcus and I met 3 years ago through mutual friends at a rooftop party in downtown Denver. He was this incredibly charming marketing executive, 32 years old, with the kind of smile that could light up an entire room. I was immediately drawn to his confidence and humor. What I did not realize was that wherever Marcus went, Jake followed. Jake had been Marcus's college roommate at University of Colorado, and they had maintained this unusually close friendship that I initially found endearing. Jake was always there for our movie nights, our weekend hiking trips, even our romantic dinners somehow turned into group outings. But Marcus assured me that Jake was just his best friend, practically a brother, and that once we got married, things would change. Our relationship progressed beautifully over those 3 years. Marcus would surprise me with weekend getaways to Aspen romantic picnics by Cherry Creek and thoughtful gifts that showed he really listened to me. As a corporate lawyer at one of Denver's most prestigious firms, I was used to being independent and self-sufficient. But Marcus made me feel like I could have both a successful career and a loving partnership. The proposal happened at Red Rocks Amphitheater during a John Mayer concert, our favorite artist. Marcus got down on one knee right there in our seats presenting his grandmother's vintage diamond ring while thousands of people cheered around us. It was magical, everything I had dreamed of. The ring was absolutely stunning, a 1940s Art Deco setting with a brilliant round diamond that caught the light from every angle. We spent 8 months planning what was supposed to be the perfect wedding. The venue we chose was a luxury mountain resort about an hour outside Boulder with panoramic views of the Rocky Mountains that took your breath away. The ceremony space had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-capped peaks, and the reception hall featured exposed wooden beams and a stone fireplace that created the most romantic atmosphere. Our guest list included 150 people, a perfect mix of both our families, college friends, and professional colleagues. I had spent months working with a seamstress to create my dream dress, a custom-made gown with delicate lace sleeves and a flowing train that would look absolutely stunning against the mountain backdrop. Every fitting made me more excited about walking down that aisle. What I failed to notice, or perhaps chose to ignore, were the small red flags that kept appearing throughout our engagement. Jake was overly involved in our wedding planning, always offering suggestions about the menu, the music, even the flower arrangements. He would text Marcus during our date nights, and I would watch Marcus's face light up in a way that made me slightly uncomfortable. They had inside jokes that I was never quite part of, and private conversations that would stop abruptly when I entered the room. The week before our wedding was supposed to be filled with joy and anticipation. We had our rehearsal dinner planned for Friday night at a beautiful restaurant in downtown Boulder, followed by the ceremony on Saturday afternoon. I had taken time off from the law firm to handle all the final details, and everything was falling perfectly into place. My bridesmaids had arrived from out of town, my parents were staying at a nearby bed and breakfast, and I had even booked us a 2-week honeymoon in Italy with first-class tickets to Rome and a villa in Tuscany. That Friday afternoon, I was in my office finishing up some last-minute work so I could fully disconnect for our wedding and honeymoon. I remember feeling so incredibly happy and confident about my future. I was texting my wedding party about the timeline for the next day, confirming pickup times for hair and makeup, and making sure everyone had the correct address for the venue. Marcus had called me that morning to say he and Jake were driving up to the resort to check on some final details with the wedding coordinator. I thought it was sweet that he wanted everything to be perfect for our special day. He promised to call me later with an update about how everything looked. At exactly 2:47 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text notification. I glanced at it while reviewing a contract, expecting to see a message about traffic or maybe a photo of our beautiful ceremony space all set up and ready for tomorrow. Instead, I saw Marcus and Jake standing at the altar where I was supposed to marry Marcus in less than 24 hours. But this was not the sweet photo I was expecting. They were standing incredibly close together, their arms wrapped around each other's waists, both of them beaming with joy in a way that made my stomach drop. They looked like they were posing for engagement photos, not like a groom and his best man checking venue details. The mountain vista behind them was absolutely stunning, exactly as I had dreamed, but the two men in the foreground created a picture that made no sense to me. Then I read the caption that accompanied the photo, and my blood turned to ice. "We're getting married instead." The pink heart emoji that followed those 5 words felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I stared at my phone screen, reading those words over and over again, hoping I was somehow misunderstanding what I was seeing. My first instinct was complete denial. This had to be some kind of joke, maybe a poorly thought-out prank that Marcus would explain later with an embarrassed laugh. But as I studied the photo more carefully, I realized that both men looked genuinely happy, not like they were posing for a silly joke. Their body language suggested an intimacy that I had been blind to for 3 years. I immediately tried calling Marcus, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again, my hands starting to shake as each call was ignored. Then I opened Instagram and Facebook, searching for any additional clues about what was happening at my wedding venue. That is when I found Jake's social media accounts, which I rarely checked because I honestly did not pay much attention to him despite his constant presence in our lives. Jake had posted the same photo on his Instagram story, but with a different caption that made everything devastatingly clear. "Finally ready to stop hiding who we really are. Sorry, Eliza, but we could not keep pretending anymore." The casual way he mentioned my name like an afterthought to their grand revelation made me feel physically sick. I started scrolling through their recent social media posts, looking for clues I had missed. There were subtle hints everywhere once I knew what to look for. Photos of Marcus and Jake at restaurants I did not recognize, tagged at locations where Marcus had told me he was traveling for work. Weekend hiking trips that Marcus said were solo adventures for mental clarity, but now I could see Jake's hiking boots in the corner of several photos. Going back through my text messages with Marcus, I began to see our recent conversations in a completely different light. His responses had become shorter and less affectionate over the past few months. When I suggested romantic date nights, he would often suggest including Jake or other friends. When I tried to plan intimate weekends away, he always seemed to have conflicting work obligations. The physical symptoms of my realization were overwhelming. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might have a panic attack. My hands were trembling as I held my phone, and I felt nauseous in a way that made me wonder if I was going to be sick right there in my office. The room felt like it was spinning, and I had to grip the edge of my desk to steady myself. My colleague Sarah knocked on my door around 3:15, probably to discuss a case we were working on together, but she immediately noticed something was wrong. I must have looked completely pale and shaken because she asked if I needed medical attention. I managed to tell her that I was dealing with a personal emergency and needed to leave early, but I could barely form coherent sentences. Rather than rushing home in an emotional state, I made a decision that probably saved my dignity and my sanity. I locked my office door and took several deep breaths, looking at myself in the small mirror I kept in my desk drawer. I had built my entire legal career on staying calm under pressure and thinking strategically rather than reacting emotionally. This situation, as devastating as it was, required the same approach. I spent the next 2 hours methodically gathering information and making strategic decisions. First, I logged into our shared bank accounts and credit cards to see if there were any financial signs of what had been happening behind my back. What I discovered made me even more angry than the original photo. Marcus had been using our joint checking account to pay for weekend trips that he never mentioned to me. Hotel reservations in Vail, Steamboat Springs, and even Las Vegas, all for 2 guests, all on weekends, when he told me he was working or needed alone time. The credit card statements showed expensive dinners at romantic restaurants, couples spa treatments, and even jewelry purchases that I never received. I also discovered that several of our wedding vendors had called Marcus earlier in the week asking about changes to the groom information on their contracts. The florist had been confused when Jake called to modify the bouquet arrangements. The photographer had received a request to change the name on the contract and add additional groomsmen photos that did not include me. Everything started making perfect sense in the most horrible way possible. This was not a sudden decision made in a moment of passion. Marcus and Jake had been planning to humiliate me at my own wedding, probably thinking they could dramatically announce their relationship in front of all our family and friends. The cruelty of that plan made me realize that I had never really known Marcus at all. But instead of falling apart or confronting them with tears and accusations, I decided to respond in a way that would give me back some control over this devastating situation. I opened my phone and typed a simple 2-word response to Marcus's photo: "Congrats." No explanation, no questions, no emotional outburst. Just a calm acknowledgement of what they had chosen to do. Then, I immediately began taking screenshots of everything I had discovered: the photos, the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the social media posts. If this situation resulted in any legal complications related to our shared finances or wedding expenses, I wanted documentation of everything. Within 30 minutes of sending that simple, "Congrats" text, I put my plan into action. The first step was protecting my financial security, which meant immediately removing Marcus from all our joint accounts and canceling every shared credit card. I called each bank and credit card company explaining that I needed to remove an authorized user due to a relationship change. The timing of my financial moves could not have been more perfect. Marcus and Jake were apparently celebrating their big revelation with an expensive dinner at one of Denver's most exclusive restaurants based on the location tags I could see on Jake's Instagram story. When Marcus tried to pay for their romantic celebration dinner, every single one of his cards was declined. I can only imagine the embarrassment he felt trying to explain to Jake and the restaurant staff why none of his cards were working. Next, I drove to Marcus's luxury downtown apartment where he had been keeping most of his expensive belongings while we prepared to move in together after the wedding. I had a key and the legal right to collect the personal items I had given him as gifts over the past 3 years. This included the Rolex watch I had saved up for months to buy him for his last birthday, several designer suits I had purchased for our fancy work events, expensive cologne collections, and various other luxury items that represented thousands of dollars. But instead of creating drama by leaving his belongings scattered around his apartment, I carefully packed everything into boxes and loaded them into my car. Then I drove to the large dumpster behind my apartment building and systematically threw away every single item. The Rolex made a particularly satisfying sound when it hit the bottom of the metal container. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was walking her dog when she witnessed me throwing away box after box of expensive-looking items. She approached me with concern, probably thinking I was having some kind of breakdown. When I briefly explained that my fiancé had left me for his best man the day before our wedding, she was outraged on my behalf and told me I was handling the situation with remarkable grace. The next part of my plan required some creativity and a phone call to someone I had never expected to become my ally. I had always gotten along well with Sophia, who was one of Marcus's close female friends from his previous job. She was intelligent, funny, and had always been kind to me, even though we had never spent time together without Marcus present. I called Sophia and explained the entire situation from the photo at the venue to the evidence I had discovered about Marcus and Jake's secret relationship. She was absolutely shocked and immediately apologetic, explaining that she had noticed some strange behavior from Marcus recently, but never imagined anything like this was happening. When I offered her the Italy honeymoon trip that Marcus and I were supposed to take together, she initially protested that it would be too weird and inappropriate. But after I explained that the tickets were non-refundable and I refused to waste a 2-week vacation in Tuscany and Rome, she agreed to come with me. The travel agent was able to change the name on the second ticket, and suddenly I had transformed my ruined honeymoon into a girls' trip with someone who was equally disgusted by Marcus's behavior. The final touch of my revenge plan was purely symbolic, but felt incredibly satisfying. I drove back to the mountain resort, where Marcus and Jake were probably still celebrating their big revelation, and I left my custom-made wedding dress draped across Marcus's car windshield with a simple note: "Since you will not be needing a bride anymore, you will not be needing this either." Marcus tried calling me dozens of times that evening and throughout the weekend. Each call went straight to voicemail because I had blocked his number immediately after executing my plan. Jake also attempted to reach me through social media and text messages, but I had blocked him as well. I had no interest in hearing their explanations, apologies, or attempts to make me understand their perspective. The social consequences of their actions began almost immediately. When Marcus realized his credit cards were not working, he had to call Jake's parents to loan him money for their dinner, which led to an extremely uncomfortable conversation about why they were celebrating together the night before Marcus was supposed to marry someone else. Jake's family was horrified when they learned what had happened, and they made it clear that they did not support his decision to break up my engagement in such a cruel and public way. Our mutual friends were bombarded with questions about what had happened when they arrived at the resort on Saturday morning to discover that there would be no wedding. The vendors were confused and frustrated about the last-minute cancellation, and several of them refused to work with Marcus again after learning how he had handled the situation. Marcus's professional reputation also suffered significant damage. Word spread quickly through Denver's business community about what he had done, and several of his clients requested to work with different account managers. The marketing industry in Denver is smaller than people realize, and Marcus's personal behavior reflected poorly on his professional integrity. Meanwhile, I spent Saturday morning at a spa getting a massage and facial instead of having my hair and makeup done for a wedding that would never happen. I posted a single photo on social media showing me relaxing by a pool with a glass of champagne and the caption, "Sometimes life gives you exactly what you need instead of what you thought you wanted." The next week was a whirlwind of finalizing my revenge and preparing for the Italy trip that would end up being one of the best experiences of my life. Sophia and I spent hours on the phone planning our itinerary, bonding over our shared disbelief about Marcus's behavior and our excitement about exploring Italy together. When we met at Denver International Airport for our departure, I felt more liberated and excited than I had in months. Sophia had brought travel guides and a carefully planned list of museums, restaurants, and day trips she wanted to experience. I had packed light, bringing only clothes that made me feel confident and beautiful, nothing that reminded me of Marcus or our failed relationship. Our first stop was Rome, where we spent 4 days exploring the Colosseum, Vatican City, and countless piazzas filled with incredible art and architecture. Sophia turned out to be the perfect travel companion, adventurous enough to try street food from random vendors, but organized enough to ensure we did not miss any major attractions. We took hundreds of photos together, documenting every gelato flavor we tried and every sunset we watched from scenic overlooks. From Rome, we traveled to our villa in Tuscany, which was even more beautiful than the photos had suggested. Rolling hills covered with vineyards stretched out in every direction from our terrace, and the small town nearby was filled with family-owned restaurants and shops where we practiced our terrible Italian with patient local residents. During our wine tasting tours through the Tuscan countryside, Sophia and I had long conversations about relationships, career goals, and the unexpected friendship that had developed between us. She confessed that she had always thought Marcus was somewhat selfish and immature, but she never imagined he was capable of such deliberate cruelty. We both agreed that I was better off discovering his true character before legally binding myself to him in marriage. I also discovered a passion for photography during our trip. The Italian landscape provided endless opportunities to practice composition and lighting, and I found that focusing on capturing beautiful images helped me process my emotions in a healthy way. By the time we returned to Denver, I had decided to pursue photography as a serious hobby and potentially even a side business. Meanwhile, back in Colorado, Marcus and Jake were discovering that their dramatic romantic revelation had consequences they had not fully considered. Several friends and family members had completely cut off contact with them, disgusted by the timing and method of their announcement. Marcus's younger sister called him to say that she was embarrassed to be related to him and that their parents were reconsidering their relationship with Jake, whom they had welcomed as a family friend for years. The financial reality of their decision was also becoming clear. Marcus had lost access to my income and savings, which had been subsidizing his expensive lifestyle more than he realized. Jake had never been particularly financially successful, working in freelance graphic design with inconsistent income. Together, they were struggling to afford the luxury apartment and lifestyle that Marcus had become accustomed to with my financial partnership. Marcus made several attempts to contact me through mutual friends, sending flowers to my office and writing long letters that I returned unopened. He apparently told people that he had made a terrible mistake and wanted to explain himself, but I had no interest in hearing anything he had to say. Some mutual friends tried to convince me that I should at least listen to his side of the story, but I felt that his actions had communicated everything I needed to know about his character. Jake's family completely disowned him after learning more details about how long he and Marcus had been carrying on their secret relationship behind my back. His parents had always been conservative, but even his more liberal siblings were horrified by the deliberate deception and cruelty involved in their plan to humiliate me at my own wedding. When I returned to work after my Italy trip, I threw myself into my legal career with renewed energy and focus. Without the distraction of wedding planning and relationship drama, I was able to take on more challenging cases and work toward the promotion I had been pursuing for over a year. My colleagues noticed the change in my confidence and productivity, and several mentioned that I seemed happier and more focused than they had seen me in a long time. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, I received a promotion to senior associate at my law firm, along with a significant salary increase and the opportunity to work on high-profile cases that would advance my career in ways I had only dreamed about. I celebrated by taking another trip this time, a solo adventure to New Zealand, where I continued developing my photography skills and proved to myself that I was completely capable of creating my own happiness. Sophia and I maintained our friendship after Italy, meeting regularly for dinner and weekend adventures around Colorado. She often joked that Marcus had done us both a favor by introducing us, even though that was certainly not his intention. Through Sophia, I learned that Marcus and Jake's relationship was struggling under the pressure of social disapproval and financial stress. Apparently, their romantic fantasy was much more appealing than the reality of building a life together while dealing with the consequences of their betrayal. 2 years after that devastating photo changed my life, I can honestly say that I am grateful for every painful moment that led me to where I am today. The betrayal forced me to discover strength I did not know I possessed, and taught me the difference between reacting emotionally and responding strategically to life's challenges. My photography hobby has evolved into a successful side business, specializing in landscape and travel photography that allows me to explore beautiful locations while building a creative portfolio. I have sold prints to galleries in Denver and Boulder, and I am planning to publish a coffee table book featuring images from my solo travels around the world. Professionally, I made partner at my law firm earlier this year, achieving a goal that seemed impossible when I was focused on planning a wedding instead of advancing my career. The confidence I gained from handling my personal crisis with grace and intelligence translated directly into my professional success, and my colleagues often seek my advice on handling difficult situations with clients or opposing counsel. I have also started dating again, but with a completely different approach than before. I now trust my instincts when I notice red flags, and I refuse to compromise my values or independence for the sake of a relationship. The man I am currently seeing respects my boundaries, celebrates my achievements, and has never made me feel like I need to choose between my career and our relationship. Sophia remains one of my closest friends, and we take international trips together every year to celebrate the anniversary of our accidental friendship. She often tells people that our Italy trip was one of the best experiences of her life, and we both agree that Marcus inadvertently gave us a gift by bringing us together, even though that was never his intention. As for Marcus and Jake, their relationship lasted about 18 months before the pressure of social isolation and financial struggle became too much for them to handle. I learned through mutual friends that they broke up after a series of arguments about money and their lack of social support. Marcus apparently tried to blame Jake for the entire situation, claiming that he had been manipulated into betraying me, which caused Jake to realize that Marcus was not the person he thought he was falling in love with. Marcus made one final attempt to contact me about 6 months ago, sending a letter through my law firm explaining that he had learned from his mistakes and asking for a chance to apologize in person. I did not respond to his letter, but I did keep it as a reminder of how far I have come since that devastating Friday afternoon when my world fell apart. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that betrayal reveals character both in the people who betray you and in yourself. Marcus and Jake revealed that they were willing to be deliberately cruel in pursuit of their own happiness. But my response to their betrayal revealed that I was stronger, more strategic, and more resilient than I had ever given myself credit for. I also learned that the best revenge is not always about making other people suffer for their actions. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let their betrayal diminish your own happiness and success. By focusing on my career, my friendships, and my personal growth, instead of dwelling on anger and resentment, I created a life that is more fulfilling than anything I had imagined when I was planning to marry Marcus. Looking back, I realized that there were signs throughout my relationship with Marcus that we were not truly compatible in the ways that matter most. I was building a career and planning for financial security, while he was more focused on maintaining an image of success without the substance to support it. I valued loyalty and honesty, while he was comfortable with deception and manipulation when it served his purposes. The experience taught me to value my own instincts and to never ignore red flags for the sake of maintaining a relationship that is not serving my best interests. It also showed me the importance of having friends who will support you during difficult times and celebrate your successes without jealousy or competition. Most importantly, I learned that you can forgive someone for betraying you without allowing them back into your life. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself from anger and resentment, not about giving someone permission to hurt you again. I have forgiven Marcus and Jake for what they did to me, but that forgiveness does not include giving them access to my life or energy ever again. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and walking away with your dignity intact. I learned that betrayal reveals character, and my response revealed mine. What do you think you would have done in my situation? Would you have confronted them emotionally or chosen the strategic approach like I did? Let me know in the comments below, and do not forget to hit that like button if this story inspired you to trust your own strength. Subscribe for more stories about turning life's worst moments into opportunities for growth, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they are stronger than they know. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing that could happen for you.